to hear all of your stories, and then I'll move on to the next one.
Terace, go for it, girl.
Well, I joined the military from Japan, and everyone that knows me, actually, I was totally against the military before I joined it. My dad was a Marine. He ended up flying President Obama around. That's where it kind of cool. But before that, I was totally against the military, and then I ended up joining it. And my family was like, you joined? You like hated the military. But I joined from Japan as a broadcast journalist, and basically I got sent right back to Japan, where I was a anchor, radio show host, as well as a huge volunteer across the base. And one of the things that I always volunteered with was SARC. So I would help survivors of sexual assault, or I would help put on plays and kind of spread the word about what happens if you are sexually assaulted, like what different things are provided to you. Well, on Veterans Day in 2013, I was raped. And here it is, I did all this training and I was helping so many other people, giving them advice, and I didn't even take my own advice that I was dishing out to people. And so for me, being a public figure, I was kind of known as like Yokota's princess. Everyone knew me. I was on TV, radio, the magazine covers, volunteering. So everyone knew me. So for me, I was ashamed because I spent this however long trying to build my career to this point. And now all of a sudden I have this assault that happened to me. And one, it was with someone who's very popular on the base as well. So for me, I'm like, people are going to believe him. He's a guy's guy. Everyone loves him. Like, you know, no one's going to believe me. And so that fear, not to mention with people watching me all over Japan, all over Korea and parts of Europe, knowing that this happened to me, it was terrifying. And I didn't want to report it. And I didn't want to come forward. It wasn't until I spoke to a chaplain that she encouraged me. And it made me realize, I said, you know, I have to speak up about this, because what I ended up finding out later was he had did this to other people. And so I said, you know, I guess I'm taking this on myself, that I have this responsibility that I need to report this and stop this, because if I don't, he will continue to do it. Like I said, he was a guy's guy. Everyone loved him. All the women loved him. All the men loved him. And so, you know, it was kind of like my word against his. But what ended up happening was I actually ended up taking him to court. He got discharged. Unfortunately, he did not have to register as a sex offender. I felt he should have had to do that. But in doing all of that, the experience, one, I got sent away from Japan. So no more anchoring, no more reporter. I got sent here in Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. And at that point, I hit my darkest moment. Like I was told 3 days before, you're leaving the country because we're fearing for your safety. My new unit didn't even know I was coming. Like they found out on Facebook 24 hours before my flight that I was coming. They had no idea. But once I got here, they welcomed me with open arms. They didn't ask any questions. And I actually just found out recently that they didn't even know what happened to me. Like they just were told, you're getting a new airman. And so they thought I was a problem airman, because all of a sudden they're getting told like 12 hours before up. So they had no idea. And so in that sense, I flew here with no money, no car, no living situation. So I had to find a car, an apartment, and all those things in less than a week. Found that. And then I was still trying to battle those inner demons with blaming myself, feeling like it was my fault. I'm supposed to be example. I'm supposed to be helping other women with this. And then it happens to me and I'm not doing what I advised. And so what ended up happening was one day I was at work. I worked at the public affairs office and I just broke down and started crying. And my supervisor, she came over to me. She said, Terace, what's wrong? And I said, I'm so sorry. I have to go. And I hadn't been going to counseling either. I stopped going to counseling. And so she said, well, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know if you know this, but this is what happened to me. I was brutally raped. And I thought you guys knew. She said, no. Well, she told me she didn't know. The rest of the unit I found out recently didn't know either. But she was like, no, Terace, I had no idea. And she was like, I'm so sorry. Like, do what you need to do. Take the rest of the day. Do what you need to do. So I went home, got myself together. I got back into counseling. And from that experience, I started creating video PSAs with other survivors who have been raped in the military. One was actually a dependent. She was gang raped by military members. So it wasn't just service members who were raped, but it was also dependents. And so I became an advocate. Like I started making these different PSAs and just trying to stand up for these women, because I knew I went through it. Now I understand how you feel, and the retaliation, and for people to stop talking to you and cut you off and blame you and say it's your fault. I mean, the questions that people ask, the first thing they say is, what were you wearing? What were you doing? Why did you let him in your room? like questions like that. I'm like, I just got back from pre-deployment training and I was unpacking when this guy showed up at my room at 3 a.m. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't dressed any sort of way. And even if I was, that's beside the point. That doesn't give anyone the right to barge into my room and brutally attack me. You know what I'm saying? And so for me to be able to help women who are experiencing that became my mission. And so I started doing those PSAs. I've even most recently written a book. I'm hoping to get it published soon. And it's basically talking about my experience overcoming trauma. And also it's kind of a self-help book. What you can do if you've gone through it, or if you know of others who have gone through it, what to expect. If you want to report it, what's that process like? And advice on if you are assaulted, what do you need to do? Immediately keep the clothing from it. Write down what happened. Take photos. Contact the police. Keep records, text messages, screenshots, any of those things. You have to keep those things because you just don't know. Even if you don't want to report it, just keep those things because you never know down the road. You might change your mind. You might see your assaulter who you work with every day and he says something smug to you or he attacks you again. You have proof of all those things happening. And so in that instance, I was able to take that pain and it was a lot. I was able to take all of that and channel it to try to help other women who have gone through it. And so that's why I'm so happy to be a part of Final Salute as well, because 39.7% of homeless veteran women experience a sexual assault. And also, I was homeless at one point. As a matter of fact, most recently, I was homeless in 2019 as a network news reporter. So if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And I'm hoping that with doing this competition, it'll encourage more people to open up about what they've experienced. Don't be ashamed. Things happen. Life happens. It doesn't mean it's your fault. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Life just happens. If you've experienced homelessness, it doesn't mean it was your fault. Like in my instance, I had 3 housing situations, and literally the day I got here, I moved here for a job. The day I got here, they all bailed out. So I'm like, oh shoot. And I had no savings because I spent all my savings moving my stuff up here. So things happen, and so I'm glad to be on here to talk about this, but that's kind of the circumstances that I was able to overcome and try to help others.